joining in. So maybe just a few seconds and then we can start. Yeah. Well, I can say good morning. It's 9:30 in Copenhagen, so I can still say good morning probably to you. A very warm welcome to our webinar on a very exciting topic, how to become a supplier to the United Nations. The UN and its many organizations represent an enormous market potential and many opportunities. Nevertheless, I can understand that the size of this potential customer might be quite overwhelming when trying to figure out what are the specific opportunities within a certain sector or a product category, or when trying to figure out how to approach what seems to be quite a complex procurement system. Therefore, we organized the webinar today to help you navigate the UN procurement system. The goal is to learn what are the necessary first steps on the way of becoming a UN supplier and how to increase your chance for success. My name is Lucy Fellison. I am the EASi export advisors responsible for the Danish market stationed in Copenhagen, Denmark. The reason why I am together with the Estonian Embassy in Copenhagen organizing this webinar is because we work quite closely with the UN, as 11 UN agencies have huge representations based in Copenhagen too. So I will guide you for the next approximately an hour and a half. Let's start with a brief review of what we have on the agenda. So first of all, I am very honored that we have two highly qualified UN representatives with us today. We have Carrie Castle, who is the coordinator of the UN's Global Network of Procurement Directors. Carrie will introduce the UN, their various areas of work, and provide some valuable insights on conducting business with the UN. She will also give an overview of the general UN procurement needs and opportunities. And then we have Diane Valentine, a program analyst at the United Nations Global Marketplace. She's also based in Copenhagen, Denmark. Diane will introduce the official procurement portal of the UN, give a quick practical guide on how to register as a supplier, and she will provide some useful information and tips how to work with the UNGM portal so that you can increase your chances for winning a contract. At the next point on the agenda, we'll hear from Mari-Liis Sepp, Deputy Head of Mission at the Estonian Embassy in Copenhagen, who will provide details and practical information regarding the application and registration process for the upcoming UN International Procurement Seminar. I will shortly give you a brief introduction to this event as well. Last but not least, we have Monika Lekic, Head of Project Development at Estonian E-Governance Academy, who have until now implemented several UN projects and have a few ongoing. Monika has been so kind to accept the invitation to join us today and share E-Governance Academy's experience as a UN supplier. She will talk about how did they win the first contract, what were the lessons learned, and she would also say a few words about how they function as a UN supplier in the current COVID situation. So I would like to encourage all of you to use this unique opportunity to ask questions to our fantastic speakers. For this, you can use either the Q&A functions or chat functions of this platform. And then I will do my best to pose the questions to the right speakers and make sure they get answered. But before I give the word to our guest speakers, I would like to use a few minutes to introduce the upcoming virtual United Nations International Procurement Seminar, which will take place over 2 days, 28 and 29 of January 2021. There is a long tradition for these international procurement seminars, but actually this is the first time Estonia is taking part of it. We are taking part in it as a member of a consortium of 6 countries: Austria, Estonia, France, Germany, Portugal, and Spain. And altogether, we anticipate about 100 companies to join. The seminar was supposed to take place as a physical event in the UN city in Copenhagen, but due to the current situation, we have decided to host the event virtually. However, we can say that thanks to the virtual platform or format, we were able to add quite a few interesting and valuable features to the program, which we're quite excited about. So this seminar will be or is for companies who are really eager to explore opportunities for selling to the United Nations and to learn about the specific opportunities embedded at the different UN agencies. Most importantly, the participating companies will have the opportunity to speak directly to the UN agencies and pitch their solutions and ideas directly to them. To this end, the participation is valuable for both companies with previous experience with the United Nations, as well as for new potential vendors to the UN. And companies of all sizes and all sectors are very welcome to participate. There are no restrictions. The program for the 2-day virtual seminar will be quite dynamic and will offer a combination of various elements. The focus will be on providing valuable insights into the UN procurement needs, trends, and practices. We have invited 10 UN agencies to be part of this seminar. These agencies will present an overview of how they work with suppliers, what are their current procurement needs, what are they looking into buying. They will describe the market trends within their areas of expertise, and also they will be answering direct questions from the participating companies. We will also organize several live discussions and roundtables on various topics. These will be on thematic subjects like working with innovation or sustainable procurement. And furthermore, we will have sectorial discussions looking at, for example, medical equipment procurement, water, energy, IT, and food. But the exact topics will be decided a little bit later, because when we know who are the participating companies, because we would like to make sure that the topics reflect the audience interests and make them relevant for them. Then in parallels to the, so to say, stage program, there will be pre-scheduled one-on-one meetings with UN procurement officers taking place, as well as all participating companies will have the possibility to engage and network with each other and schedule B2B meetings. The virtual platform of the event also enables to create a marketplace where participating companies can showcase their products, services, and expertise towards both the UN agencies and towards each other. And lastly, we'll also prepare several testimonials from successful UN suppliers, which will be available during the seminar for companies who would be interested to learn from others' experience. So this was about the program, and in general, just a short invitation to this seminar. Later on in our webinar today, we have Marlista from the embassy giving more detailed information about the application registration process. So I would like to suggest that you maybe wait a little bit with questions until Marlista's presentation, and then we'll answer all of your questions regarding this UN International Procurement Seminar. So now, without further ado, I will give the word to our first presenter from the UN, Carrie Castle. Hello, Carrie. You can start sharing your screen and unmute your phone. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. And I don't know if people noticed on your slides this star-shaped building as the background, but that is our office in Copenhagen, which I'm afraid is quite empty at the moment because most of us are working from home, given the current situation. Yes, so I, as mentioned by Lucy, I am the coordinator of the UN's network of procurement directors, but I'm also the focal point for the UN's International Procurement Seminar initiative. So we have several of these a year, hosted by various countries, and we will begin launching this program on a virtual basis in January. So we're very excited about that. I'm very excited to partner with the consortium of countries on this event. So this presentation that we start with this morning, it's really aimed at companies who want to gain a greater understanding of UN's procurement activities, structure and procedures, etc. So the overall aim is to guide you in approaching the UN to do business. It's quite general in nature, but should give you a good basic understanding and preparation for the seminar in January. And in January, of course, you'll have plenty of opportunity to go into more depth on our procurement activities and procedures, and again, with the individual agencies themselves. So this morning, it's just really a taster and hopefully to help get you started and prepare a little bit for what comes in January. So what we'll look at, we'll start by looking at some of our facts and figures on procurement, the trends on what we're buying. And then we'll talk about supplying the UN, which I think is probably what is of most interest to you. And then we'll move on to take a look at our procurement procedures, and I'll round off with some practical tips for you. So looking at the statistics, this slide shows the trend over the past 5 years of our procurement volume. So as you see, it tends to be an upward trend from year to year, increasing. Last year, the total was almost $20 billion US. And I expect actually for 2020, once we have those figures, we'll see quite a considerable jump given the COVID-19 pandemic and all the procurement that's been necessary for that. But we won't know that until we get into next year and have gathered the data from all the agencies. And this slide shows the procurement volume of the 10 principal UN organizations for last year. So the top 10 largest procurement volumes. And the placements of the various agencies does change around a bit from year to year. And some of the agencies over to the right, they might pop out of the top 10 and others pop in. But generally the ones over to the left, the larger ones, they're there every year. And sometimes they swap places depending on what kind of a year it has been for them. But for last year, UNICEF was had the largest procurement volume of the whole UN family, with about $3.8 billion US. This was followed by the World Food Programme. And then in third place, we have UNPD, which is UN Procurement Division, not to be confused with UNDP, which is beside it. Very similar acronyms, but two very separate organizations. UNPD is the UN Secretariat based in New York, and they do the procurement for the Secretariat in New York, but also for the peacekeeping mission. One more thing to note about this slide, and you'll see this as we move on this morning, the UN is made up of dozens and dozens of different agencies and entities. Even we staff in the UN family don't know them all. But what's interesting is the top 10 here accounts for over 90% of our procurement volume. So that can help maybe narrow it down for you a little bit if you're wondering where to start and who to start with. Here we have another top 10, and this is the top 10 countries of supply to the UN last year. And generally you'll see where there is a large UN presence or a lot of UN activity, naturally the procurement volume will be high. And that's the reason why you see, for example, the US here. We have also headquarters in Switzerland. We have our procurement hub in Denmark, and we have another hub in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. So those countries tend to always be in the top 10. But there are other reasons. Some of the large areas we're procuring in, like pharmaceuticals, and food. We have large contracts, for example, for pharmaceuticals in India, Belgium, France, Netherlands, US. And for food, we're buying a lot of food in Yemen, in Kenya, and in also United Arab Emirates. So there's good solid reasons for why these countries are in the top 10, but in theory, anyone can be in the top 10. It just depends on who is awarded the contracts. And some are successful from year to year. India, for example, has been in the top 10 for 20 years and reached second place last year for the first time in 4 years. So India has been very successful in doing business with the UN. So what are we actually buying? We have 5 main sectors or account for the bulk of what we're buying. About 70% are made up of these sectors you'll see at the bottom of the slide. The share that each has does fluctuate from year to year, but these 5 are always there. So the biggest one being health, and that covers mainly pharmaceuticals, including vaccines and contraceptives, but also all sorts of laboratory and medical equipment. And then we have transport. Obviously, we're shipping goods all over the world every day, so freight forwarding accounts for a lot of spend. But this category also encompasses warehousing and fuel and lubricants and some other items. Then we have quite a broad area: consultancy, administration, and operations. So that can be, for example, all of our own operations, or the operations of our office space and the administration of all of those functions. And then consultancy. We use a lot of technical support for project work. So we engage not only with consultancy firms, but also individual consultants. And then the 5th area is construction and engineering. And this is, again, fairly broad, but it's for all the works projects, basically, that we have going on across the world. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, but what I offer doesn't fall under any of these 5, don't lose too much heart, because there's another 30% or so of other things we're buying, and we really are buying a lot of other things, as well as these top 5 sectors I've mentioned. So if we just zoom in for a moment, and these will be the last couple of slides with facts and figures in case you're feeling a little overwhelmed by that, but just to take a quick look at Estonia. So again, you'll see the trend over the years. It's been rather fluctuating, with a volume of almost $1.6 million last year. It seems to be that we're mainly procuring services from Estonia to date, but Estonia ranks currently at 174th in the total. So as I see it, I think there's plenty of room for growth there, and hopefully today will be the beginning of seeing the trend go up a little bit. And the IPS in January, at the International Procurement Seminar, these are the kind of events that we hope stimulates more procurement from countries and vendors that are interested in it. And this slide just shows what we've been buying last year. So as mentioned, it's mainly services. I won't read them all to you, but the top one seems to be engineering and research services. And over on the other side, you'll see the agencies that have been responsible for the procurement from Estonia last year. I'll just mention the top 4. The first one is IOM, which is the International Organization for Migration. And then we have UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. UNDP is the United Nations Development Programme, and then WHO, World Health Organization. Okay, so now we move on to talking about how to supply the UN and how to go about it. Now, I mentioned a few slides ago how many different entities we have, and this chart shows it all. And you'll see there are many, and the structure is quite complicated. So there's all sorts of programs and funds, specialized agencies, and all sorts of offices reporting into the Secretariat. It's really, you'll be glad to hear, not so important to understand or know all of that. What is important is what comes on this slide, and that is not to see us as a single organization, but each organization is a market in itself. So each has its own function and characteristics and requirements, depending on the mandate that it has. For instance, you have UNICEF with its focus on the well-being of children, UNHCR taking care of refugees, and World Food Programme in fighting hunger. So all very different areas, so very much separate. And it's really important to realize that, or to recognize it if you want to do business with the UN. But I think it also simplifies things for you, because approaching the UN can be quite I think, daunting if you don't know it, because of the sheer size of it. So breaking it down does make it a little bit more palatable, I think. So I think you need to ask yourselves if you're ready to supply the UN. Do you understand our market? That's what we're helping with today and in January. Are you able to offer the products and services that we're buying? And do you have export experience and the references to back it up? UN is operating with public funds, so we like to work with companies that have a good solid track record and can be relied upon, so that we feel safe. Can you offer competitive pricing? And do you have the networks and the partners that are needed in some of the places we're working in for some of the things that we're buying? For instance, many things that we buy require after-sales service. So it's important that we have partners on the ground in the far corners of the world where we're working that can provide that. And do you have sufficient capacity, both in terms of personnel and financial capacity? And that actually starts right at the point of tender. Some of our tender processes can be quite time consuming. So it's important to have enough people that can work on that. And then intercultural skills and languages, also important. We're operating in very different, all sorts of markets. So sometimes the language is English. It might be French in other places, or Spanish, or another language. So it's important to bear that in mind. Flexibility and accuracy are also important. Sometimes, given the nature of our work, we need things faster than is desirable. So it's good to work with companies who can also react with us when needed. And accuracy and attention to detail, that goes right from tender, getting things right from the point of submitting your tender to actually getting it right when the goods or services are being supplied. And persistence and patience, not to be underestimated. Can take a few attempts to win contracts with us. It can take, some lessons learned. So the idea is don't give up too quickly. And patience is also necessary in terms of some of our, you'll see a little later on when I'm talking about our procurement procedures, some of our processes can be a little lengthy, but there are good reasons for that. So it does, from your side, from time to time, require some patience working with us. So it's really a step-by-step process towards success. You need to start by doing your market research, figuring out which UN organizations are relevant for you. And when you're registering on the UN Global Marketplace, make sure that you apply the correct coding so that procurement officers can actually find you if they're searching the database. Gain an understanding of our procurement practices. And again, that's why we're here, to help with that today and for the 2 days in January. Keep an eye on our procurement notices, and you can even subscribe to get an alert about relevant tenders if you're interested, and we'll get to that a little later this morning. And then if you are participating in a tender, a bit according to the documents, and ask if there's anything you're not sure about. Please do ask rather than guess. because it's a pity if you get disqualified at the very beginning over something that was maybe misunderstood. And performance, it really goes without saying, good performance obviously increases the chances of business, but it also can increase the chances of repeat business or even business with some of our sister agencies. So I mentioned before that you should start with your market research, and to help you with that, we have the UN Global Marketplace, where you'll find a wealth of information to help you with this. We have a knowledge center filled with different pages, resources, all sorts of information to help you understand us and how we do business. So it's really worth spending some time on that. I won't spend any more time on it right now because this is going to be the focus of the next presentation, but you'll be hearing about UNGM probably all this morning, and for the 2 days it'll come up throughout because all the agencies are using it. It is we call it the procurement portal for the UN system. Okay, so now just a few words on our actual procurement procedures. If you're already familiar with public procurement with the EU or with your own country or whatever, this may not be, it shouldn't be too different, but of course it is different, but it shouldn't be too unfamiliar. But if you're a newcomer, I hope it makes some sense for you. So there are various things that determine which procurement method that we will use. It can be the value of the procurement. It can be the types of goods and services that we need to procure. But it can also be when we actually need what we're looking for. So the methods or the types of solicitation that we use, I'll show them on the slide. There are 3. So we have, first one is a request for quotation, RFQ. So this is a less formal type of solicitation that we use for lower value procurement. I mentioned earlier that each agency or each entity of the UN is a separate entity, each with its own requirements, and that includes financial rules. So each agency has a threshold, a procurement threshold, and that can vary from agency to agency. So it might be 40,000 US dollars, but it could also be much more, or it could be less. So it's just something to be aware of. But for the sake of this slide, let's say it's 40,000. So if the threshold is 40,000, anything below that, we can use an RFQ process for the procurement. And then once we get above the threshold of 40,000, there's 2 types of procurement that we use. One is invitation to bid, ITB. So this is formal. It's when we really know what it is that we need and can define it. So it's usually used for goods. And here the contract is awarded based on the lowest price acceptable bid. And the second formal method we use, and when we go above the threshold, is a request for proposal, RFP. And this is usually for services. And here the contract is awarded a little differently. It's based on a combined or a weighted evaluation of both a technical solution and the price. So the bidder is asked to actually to submit 2 envelopes, one for the technical solution and one for the price. And the weighting for the technical solution is by far the heaviest. It's usually 60 to 70% of the score, with the remaining 30 to 40% being price. So the focus is really on getting the technical solution right. And in fact, the price will not even be looked at until the technical solution has been reviewed and approved. And that's simply to ensure that our evaluators remain impartial throughout the evaluation process. Now, there are some other activities procurement staff might use as well in the lead up to tender. They might launch a request for expression of interest, an REOI, and that's where vendors are asked to submit information on their products and services, resources, qualifications, and so on. And they sometimes also launch a request for information, or an RFI, as part of market research activities, or simply just to update their own roster for future reference. And then for complex, more risky procurement, for example, pharmaceuticals, agencies may undertake a pre-qualification process, which they'll use to shortlist vendors for a tender. So it would be that shortlisted group that would be invited for the ITB or the RFP. And I should just actually mention that if you're wondering about this evaluation of the technical solution, all the information will be provided in the bidding documents, what you will be evaluated against. So it won't be a mystery. I'll just put it that way in case you're wondering, how it'll be scored and so on. It's all very transparent and will be evident in the bidding documents. So just to summarize that, so up to the agency's threshold, we use an informal and quite simple acquisition procedure, the RFQ. And here we like to have a minimum of 3 quotes to make it a good process. And it'll be the lowest price, technically acceptable bidder, or the best value bidder that will be accepted for that. And then above the agency's threshold, it'll either be an ITB or an RFP. So it'll be a formal process, it'll be advertised on the UNGM and on the agency's website. And here we like to have a larger shortlist, so a minimum of 6 potential bidders generally, and 3 should comply for this to be a good process. And for ITBs, we actually do public bid openings, so that's where the names of the bidders is read aloud and the offering price. So that's actually a really good learning experience for newcomers. So if you've been invited, if you're participating in the tender, you've been invited to the bid opening, you should try and attend or find someone who can represent you. And that can be someone from your embassy or trade agency if it's in another location where you cannot be. But it is a good learning process to see what is happening in the market and that you can take for information for if you're not awarded the contract, but maybe for the next time. And these formal processes, they have to be approved by the most senior procurement person, the Chief Procurement Officer, after they've been reviewed and recommended by the agency's contract committee. So that's why I mentioned you need patience, because some of these processes can take time. But there's good reason for that. It's to ensure that we are doing things properly and all the rules are followed. Often our tenders form the basis for establishing long-term agreements, or LTAs as we call them, with suppliers. And we do this because a lot of the things we buy, we do on a repeat basis, so it makes sense. Generally, these contracts run for 2 to 4 years, depending on the agency, and often with some possibility for extension. And we usually have more than one LTA for the same goods or services, so that we know that we will always be able to get supply. So this single tendering exercise, it's really beneficial for us because it reduces our administration efforts, but also to increase our efficiency, we're doing more and more joint agency LTAs where we group together and go to market. And any agencies that are creating LTAs on their own do their utmost nowadays to make them agree with the supplier that they're open for other agencies to use. So this setup is also beneficial to our vendors because it also gives you some continuity of supply, but also reduces your administrative effort. So you don't need to keep submitting tenders all the time for the same thing. So it makes sense for both sides. And finally, on the procurement procedures, just to mention that we do occasionally do something called direct contracting, where we bypass those other processes I mentioned. But this is really under exceptional circumstances, like in the case of emergency, or if there only is one supplier for what we're needing, or if we have tried to do a bidding process, but it failed for a very valid reason. But we have quite strict controls and rules for this, and it has to be well justified and well documented, because the last thing we want is to be seen as undermining our principles of fairness and effective competition. The evaluation criteria, touched upon it when I mentioned the RFP back there, but it applies to bidding in general. So these are some of the criteria that we will look at when we're evaluating bids. First of all, we'll look to see if you're eligible, if you're a registered vendor. And then, of course, for us, it'll be important that you can accept our payment terms. And we also have our own UN terms and conditions. These are non-negotiable, so it's good to pay attention to them. Again, they will be included in the bidding documents. We'll look to see if technical requirements are being met, as well as the delivery time and the delivery term, or whatever Incoterms have been stipulated in the tender. And we'll also look to see if you can supply according to any of the international or national standards that apply to what it is we're looking for. And sustainability, we're seeing more and more sustainability criteria being introduced to the agency tenders as we try and do things or align ourselves with the Sustainable Development Goals. And again, these can vary. It can be to do with, for example, waste management, emissions, working conditions, and various things. And I think we will be seeing more and more of those kind of criteria coming into the tender documents. Supporting documentation, we'll be checking to see if those have been provided, as well as the references and proof that you have the capacity in terms of production and financial, as well as meeting warranty conditions and after-sale service if that is relevant for what we're looking for. And then if all of this is in order, of course, the price needs to be right. Okay, so we're getting to the end now, and just round off with some practical tips for you. So if you are taking part in a bid or invited to take part in a tender, and are unable to for some reason, please do let us know so that we know that you might be interested for another time. So just respond in some way so that we know that. And then when you move on, if you are participating in the bid, when you're preparing it, make sure to study all the documents and what's being asked of you very carefully. And of course, ask if there's anything you're unsure about rather than guess. And then before submitting, ensure that your offer meets all of the requirements that are being asked for. The technical specifications, extremely important to read carefully and meet them to a minimum. Provide any quality statements relating to the international and national standards that apply. And then submit your bid and the catalogue and anything else in the requested language. And prepare the bid to facilitate the work of the procurement officer. So in the right format, using the forms that we provide and the instructions, because for some of our procurement cases, we get a lot of submissions. So the more orderly they are, the easier it is to do the review. And then when you're submitting, meet the deadline. It's gotten a little easier now that most agencies, at least the headquarters, are doing e-tendering. So you're not relying on courier or postal systems so much anymore, but these may still be used in some cases in the field. So always meet the deadline. There is no we cannot accept bids that are submitted late. It simply goes against fairness to others. And then the bid openings I mentioned before, attend those if you're able to. And then remember, last but not least, it's a learning process. So take the lessons learned from maybe other companies that have done business with the UN. I think at the seminar in January, we will have some showcases from vendors that have had success in doing business with the UN. So that's a good learning process. But also, some of the agencies offer a debriefing after a tender. And if that is the case, I would recommend that you avail of that to learn generally the strengths and weaknesses of your tender so that you can take that forward as well. And that was all I had for the moment. So thank you for your patience and all of those slides. And I'll hand back to Lucy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carrie. This has been extremely insightful. Quite a good wealth of information that I'm sure has been quite relevant. And new, mainly for the newcomers and companies that are here maybe for the first time hearing about how to conduct business with the UN. I can see there are no questions at this point. It might be because everyone has been just, focusing on what you were saying and now trying to probably reflect on it. So I would suggest we go to Diane and then maybe see if there are some questions after her presentation, then take it there.
Yeah, and anyone is welcome to contact me afterwards as well. I guess that the slides and our contact details can be shared. So I'm happy to answer anything that people think of afterwards.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give the word to Diane, and everyone else then think of if you have any questions, and then yeah, again, you can use the Q&A function or a chat function to ask the question. Diane.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lucy, for the introduction. So today in this presentation, I will introduce you to the United Nations Global Marketplace that we also call UNGM, which is a little bit shorter with the acronym. And I will also present the registration process in order to become a potential supplier to the UN organizations, which is the first step in order to do business with the UN organizations. But first, I would like to talk a little bit about the UN market. I know that Carrie has been covering the UN market quite extensively in her presentation, so I'll be very brief. There might be some repetitions, you will see, but this is really just to emphasize sort of the central role of the UNGM portal in the UN markets. So I will just play this in full screen and we can start the presentation. So the United Nations procures goods and services from suppliers all over the world to support its activities and its operations. So the UN market is an interesting market for companies due to its procurement volume. Just to give you an example, in 2019, the UN organizations have procured for $19.9 billion worth of goods and services. But the UN market is not only an interesting market due to the size or its procurement volume, it is also an interesting market due to the diversity of goods and services that the UN organizations procure. It is also interesting in terms of the diversity of contract value, and of course, in terms of the geographical scope in which the different UN organizations operate. But when we hear about the United Nations, we often associate it with its principal organs, organizations. So we mostly think about the General Assembly, the Security Council, etc. However, the United Nations system consists of a multitude of specialized agencies, affiliated programs, funds, and other many subsidiary bodies. And these different entities actually have different mandates, they have different functions. And because of that, they also have different procurement requirements and procedures depending on their area of intervention and as well depending on the structure. So when we think about all of this, we may think that actually the UN market may seem a little bit complicated and might be also a little bit intimidating for companies to know where to start in order to approach this market. And it becomes even more complicated when we look at this organigram on the slide. We might just be feeling a little bit overwhelmed and we don't really know how to start in order to approach the UN market. This is actually why the United Nations Global Marketplace, or UNGM, was created or developed back then. So with the UNGM portal, the United Nations is actually providing sort of a common procurement portal which centralizes both the supplier registrations for many different UN organizations, but as well the dissemination of procurement-related information to suppliers. So those two aspects together, they do facilitate greatly the access of suppliers to the UN market. Okay, now that you have a bit of a better understanding of what is the UN market, let's touch on the United Nations Global Marketplace, which really acts as the gateway to the UN market. So what is exactly the United Nations Global Marketplace, or UNGM? It is the common procurement portal of the UN system. So what does that mean exactly? Well, in essence, the UN Global Marketplace is a website that brings together the procurement staff from 29 different organizations with the community of suppliers that want to do business with these 29 UN organizations. So UNGM is a registry of suppliers that is available to all UN procurement personnel, and it represents the main vendor database for these 29 UN organizations. So at the moment in our database, we have close to 280,000 companies that are being registered, and we have 10,000 UN staff members that use UNGM on a regular basis. So those are a couple of numbers to give you an idea. So what are exactly the benefits of UNGM? UNGM actually provides potential suppliers with a single registration process for 29 UN organizations. What that means is that suppliers don't have to fill out 29 different registration forms for each UN agencies. Here it is a common registration process for multiple UN organizations. The second benefit of UNGM is that it provides access to UN business opportunities and contract awards. So suppliers can actually search for business opportunities on UNGM, and these specific business opportunities are actually published by UN agencies themselves on UNGM. And then finally, the third benefit is that UNGM disseminates relevant UN procurement information to suppliers and the Knowledge Center. But I will touch upon this later in the presentation. So in terms of the registration process on UNGM, well, the registration on UNGM is the first step for your company in order to do business with the UN. So once you're registered on UNGM, your company's profile will become visible to UN procurement personnel when sourcing for suppliers. It is therefore a great springboard for you to introduce your products and services, not only to many different UN organizations, but also to UN procurement personnel in different regions and countries of the world. Then the registration on UNGM has also become more and more of a requirement for a number of UN organizations to participate in tenders. The reason for that is we have more UN organizations that are using now e-procurement systems to manage the tendering process. And these platforms, these e-procurement platforms, are actually integrated with the UNGM portal. So UNGM being the point of entry to those UN agency procurement systems, then the registration on UNGM is necessary in order to participate in these specific tenders. The registration on UNGM is free of charge. It is done online and is open for any incorporated companies. Finally, the registration on UNGM is available in 7 different languages. So the 6 UN official languages: English, French, Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, Russian, and Portuguese as well, which is the 7th language. So the registration on UNGEM is available in multiple languages to meet the language requirements of suppliers worldwide. So the registration process on UNGEM, it is simple and fairly intuitive. So it takes about 5 to 7 minutes to complete the registration. So the registration process includes 3 registration levels, which refer to different thresholds for awarded contracts. So as you can see here, we have the 3 different levels. The first one is the basic registration level. So this level, it is the common registration process, which has to be completed by all companies on UNGEM. Suppliers will be asked to complete very general information about the companies. And once the registration process has been completed, the company's profile will be matched with the UN organizations that may procure the goods and the services that the company provides. There are some UN organizations that may require additional information from suppliers in order for them to participate in certain tenders, which are actually very often of a higher contract value. And these UN organizations will require suppliers to complete additional registration levels. So the registration at level 1 and or the registration at the level 2. So the registration at the level 1, so under this level, companies will be asked to provide the company certificate of incorporation in English, so the document will have to be uploaded there, as well as 3 recent references from clients. At the level 2, the companies will be asked to upload 3 reference letters, also in English, and the audited financial documents for the last 3 years, which also need to be provided in English. So, in order to complete the registration on UNGEM, the first step is to access the UNGEM website at www.ungem.org. The second step is to create an account on UNGEM. So as you can see on the video here, you will first be asked to read the UN Supplier Code of Conduct, and then you will be asked to create an account by creating login credentials. Once you've created the account and you have activated the account, you'll be asked to complete the registration form, which I've just described. So it is a 6-step process, and you'll be asked to complete the general information about your company. So it is crucial that you ensure that the information provided in your account and in your registration is, of course, accurate and up to date, and that is in line with the registration requirements. That's why I would like to share with you a couple of tips and tricks regarding your registration on UNGEM. So the first one is that it's very important that you provide your company name as it is written in your company certificate of incorporation or any other legal document that you may have uploaded on UNGEM. It is actually a requirement to be awarded a contract. So if your company's profile is being reviewed by a UN organization and the company name that is provided in your registration is not matching the name provided in the certificate of incorporation, you'll be asked to update the name, to amend the name so that it matches the name in the certificate of incorporation. The second tip is please make sure that your contact information and the contact information of your colleagues under the account is up to date. Obviously, you don't want to miss any correspondence coming from UN procurement officer. So our suggestion is often to tell suppliers to provide a generic email address. And finally, we would also highly recommend you to be proactive on your account. So it means logging into your account fairly regularly. It is actually an information that the UN procurement officers may check. They can find out when was your last login date. So it does send sort of a positive signal if you log into your account fairly regularly and you make sure the information is accurate and up to date. And then being proactive also means that you need to search and monitor business opportunities on a regular basis. And in that sense, UNGM is actually a relevant tool for you to monitor UN procurement opportunities. So UNGM, being the common procurement portal of the UN system, it centralizes most of the UN business opportunities and contract awards published by UN organizations. So these business opportunities on UNGM, they are accessible publicly and free of charge. You can filter these business opportunities according to your preferences. So you may search by geographical location, by UN organization issuing the tender, but you can also, and I think this is the most important filter, identify procurement notices that are relevant for the goods and the services that your company provides. At any point in time, you'll find more than 800 active procurement notices on UNGM, which are published by more than 50 UN organizations and affiliated entities. So the first step in order to access business opportunities is to access the UNGM website and go to the business opportunities page. Like so. You can use the search criteria in order to search certain business opportunities. And once you've identified business opportunities of your interest, you can click on the business opportunity to access the tender details. So having access to the documentation, mainly in the contact details. If you don't have time to monitor UN procurement opportunities on a regular basis, you may consider subscribing to the Tender Alert service. So the Tender Alert service is an added value service that enables you to be alerted of the latest and most recently revised procurement opportunities which have been published on UNGM. And these alerts are actually relevant for your business because they only relate to your products and your services. These notifications are sent directly to the email address that you provided in your registration process, and your colleagues can also be added as contacts to receive the alerts as well. So the Tender Alert service is actually an optional service because it comes at a cost. So it really depends on your company whether you have the means to actually search for business opportunities regularly, or if you don't, considering subscribing to this additional service is quite relevant. The UNGM portal, as the common procurement portal of the UN system, centralizes under Knowledge Center a wealth of information and resources about the UN system and the UN market. So the objective of this Knowledge Center is to provide you with a set of information and tools to help you in your market research and to help you approach the UN market. So under the Knowledge Center, you will find information on the United Nations system, the different organizations and their structure. You'll find information about the UN market and the main categories of goods and services that are being procured by the different UN organizations. You will also find a more detailed procurement profile of the different UN organizations, including the description of the procurement activities and procedures, as well as the structure of procurement, so whether they are doing centralized or decentralized procurements. And finally, you will also have access to a space dedicated to business seminars, where you can learn more about the different business seminar modalities. You will have access to the calendar of upcoming business seminars, and you will also have access to the information and presentations that have been disseminated at previous business seminars. Under the Knowledge Center, you will also find some useful statistics about UN procurement. You will namely be able to download the annual statistical report on UN procurement, which is a yearly report that provides data and analysis on UN procurement activities. So it is a very interesting report to help you in your market research. If you don't want to go through the entire report, you can also use the different interactive dashboards that are available on UNGEM that will help you browse the UN procurement data. So that brings us to the end of this presentation. So to summarize a little bit what I've been covering in the presentation. So if you're interested in doing business with the United Nations, you can start by first getting familiar with the different UN organizations, their procurement needs, and the procedures. You should consider registering on UNGM, and also if you do, make sure that your company information and your contact details are accurate and up to date. And finally, it is very important that you check regularly procurement notices on UNGM. So being very proactive on the platform. If you don't have time to necessarily monitor these regularly, you may consider subscribing to the Tender Alert service. So doing business with the UN requires patience and perseverance. But once you've managed to obtain a first contract and you've proven yourself, it is often the beginning of a long and mutually beneficial relationship. So if you would like to have more information, please explore our help center at help.ungm.org. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.
Thank you, Diane. And you are here with us live as well, right?
Yes, I am.
So we have been receiving some questions. Let me review them. Probably some of them have arrived at the beginning of your presentation, as there is a question regarding whether the Tender Alert service is the only place where to get information about the UN tenders, or are there any other sources as well? I think this was quite well covered in your presentation, focusing on the business opportunity page on the UNGM platform, where companies have the possibility to basically screen and follow the posted UN opportunities and notices, right?
Yes. So I would just like to reiterate that the procurement notices published by the UN organizations are actually accessible free of charge on UNGM. So if you just scroll the list of business seminars that are published by the different UN organizations on UNGM, this is public information and it's free of charge. The Tender Alert service, however, is a different sort of service, which is a payable service. So this is really if you don't really have time to check the business opportunities fairly regularly. And then this service basically sends you notifications or alerts of business opportunities that correspond to the goods and services that your company provides. So it does sort of this work of sorting the business opportunities that may be relevant for your company. So this is a little bit the difference here. I also know that there are other services that are outside of UNGM that may also send sort of notifications similar to the $10 service that we have on UNGM, but we don't control those services, those external services. So just be very mindful about these. Maybe they are very useful because sometimes they centralize procurement notices coming from different sources, such as the European Union or any other institutions, but we are not responsible for these.
Right, right. The next question would be, usually the tender deadlines are very short and it takes tens of hours time to compile a proposal. So would you have any tips? Are there any best practices to follow in order to manage this? As a question from Anumal Naris. You
want me to answer that, Diane?
Yeah, I think it's for you.
Okay. Yeah, it's true. The deadlines can seem quite short, especially if you're a newcomer. But best practices, well, this is also why I emphasize needing enough personnel for the tenders, because they can be quite time consuming. But once you're familiar with them and done them a few times, hopefully it becomes more routine. But I can imagine for some of the big projects, putting a tender together can seem a little overwhelming. But I think what I've seen with vendors is once they have done it a few times, it becomes more routine than at the beginning. I don't know if that's considered best practice, but yeah, that's just the way it is, I'm afraid.
Okay, okay. I think what I'm is someone trying to connect? What I'm hearing here, that the persistence and patience is definitely something to keep in mind. Might be one of the key takeaways.
Yeah, and having enough personnel to put time into the tender preparation.
So this maybe relates a little bit to the next question, because Estonia has there are quite a lot of small companies, small and medium-sized companies, a lot of startups as well. So the question is if there are any bidding for or if there is interest to be part of UN procurement, if there is any usual minimum turnover limit, or if you could maybe elaborate a little bit on the previous experience needed.
Yeah, I mean, there will be typically the financial soundness of the business will be looked at, and there'll be request for some, statements of financial information. But it depends on what the project is and which agency it is, what the size would be. But generally, they like to see the company has been in operation for minimum 3 years and has a good, healthy bank balance. But I can't say there's any limit is, because that'll always be something that varies.
They will probably relate to the specific tender.
Sorry?
Yeah, they will probably relate to the specific
yeah, and
tender,
the specific agency and its financial rule. Yeah.
Okay, let's scroll more through the questions. Where to get statistics on previous tenders? Is it possible to get information on what was procured, who won, and what was the winning price? So also all these details.
Dan, do you want it, or did I take it?
I mean, I can take it. I think it's a fairly easy answer. So we have the annual statistical report on UN procurement that centralizes all of this information. So it is a report that is being established or published yearly that actually covers the procurement data for the previous year, right? So there you will find information about, the procurement from, different countries, from suppliers from different countries, as well as a breakdown by different categories of goods and services, by UN organization as well. And actually in the report, you will find the major contracts that have been awarded by companies per country. Right, Carrie? Yeah.
Yeah, all contracts that have been awarded above $30,000 are in there, and the company name is in there, and the amount of the contract is in there. So the report doesn't encompass all the small contracts we've had. It would simply just be an impossible task. But it's if the users are interested or the audience is interested, they can find the annual statistics. It's on the front page of UNGM. It's a very good idea to browse that to get an understanding of who's buying what and who the competition is, and who companies can maybe partner with. And I think the plan is to have a session with someone who represents this report, who works with it full time at the session in January of the seminar, to show and guide those interested in how to use it.
Yes, and also what could be useful for you is to check the contract awards that are being published on UNGM. So you will see on the homepage there is an area that is dedicated to the procurement notices. So the list of procurement notices are published there, but you also have an area dedicated to contract awards. So you can also browse the different contract awards just to get an idea of what could have been procured in the past. And often you have the supplier information that is being shared, as well as the contract value. So it can be useful for your market research.
Thank you for the answer. Now we have a question here which I don't fully understand, but maybe you will. If you could explain in what cases the express interest field is not active.
That's a really good question. It's quite a detailed question. So it can be many cases for this. The most obvious answer that I could provide to you is the express interest button is being used for suppliers in order to participate in tenders electronically. So it means in order to respond to this specific tender, there will be a process that will be done online. So it means that the UN organization is using an e-procurement system in order to manage the tendering process. But as Carrie was saying earlier, not all UN organizations are actually using e-procurement systems, and especially often when you have specific tenders that occur in field locations. So in those cases, there will be the process will be done sort of offline, so through traditional submission methods, so either via email or via post. So in those cases, you won't be able to click on the express interest button here, but you will have access to the tender documentation in the tender details. So that could be the first reason. Having said that, there are often cases where UN agencies use the procurement systems and you won't have access to, let's say, the tender documents in the tender. But the express interest button will be read only there. It might be the case in case like your registration status with the specific UN agency that is issuing the tender is actually not registered. So you need to check whether your registration status is registered with that specific agency. If it is not the case, please contact us and we'll help you to fix that. I hope that answers the question.
Quite detailed. Thank you. And okay, now the questions keep rolling in. Is an ISO certificate mandatory to participate in tenders? Is there a general answer to this one?
I'd say it's very much depending on what it is that we're looking for. And if it is mandatory, it'll say it in the documents, but I can't say that it's always mandatory. And it may be desirable, may not be mandatory. But if it's an item that is commonly certified, ISO certified, then we will probably ask for that. But it's not something I would say we ask for on everything.
Okay, Now we have a couple of more sector-specific questions. I'll try to raise them, but we understand that you are not procurement officers and might not have the deep knowledge of this. The first one is regarding educational technology in regards to the ongoing crisis and more focus on remote learning. Can you see this, that educational technology is somehow more in the spotlight of the UN organizations?
I would imagine so. I'm not involved in this area, but I know that we have started doing a lot of online training. But we've been using tools like this one, like Zoom, and other Teams, and those kind of things. So, but you know, nobody knows how long we're going to be working this way. So we might want to put more courses, make more courses available in a different way. Using other platforms. So my advice would be keep an eye on the tender notices.
The next one is regarding IT. We have a lot of IT providers in Estonia. So are there any general requirements for qualifying as a supplier within this area?
Yeah, this is a very big area for us as well. And that's one of the areas where we're trying to buy as one in the UN, and in fact UNDP has completed a very large tender process with IT consolidators this year that all the agencies are able to use. So this is not necessarily great news for someone in that branch, because we won't go to tender again for another couple of years. But we tend to use IT consolidators, so gather everything under one provider, and that's all sorts of hardware and software services, and it's standard hardware. We use a lot of different brands, but as far as I know, the technical specifications when we go to tender are open and generic, so we don't exclude people. And yeah, so that's where it's good to actually maybe to investigate the statistics, who those contracts went to, and maybe become a sub-supplier to them. And I'm happy to discuss more offline if need be and provide some context.
Yeah, but that's a useful tip. Maybe partner up with other suppliers. And I think this topic will be quite well covered also during the seminar in January. And
I think UNDP, if it's going to be one of the panel discussions or workshops, UNDP will probably be there because of this big tender that's been run. Yeah.
Wonderful. We are actually running out of time. So this I like this last question, which probably we can round off with. Does any supplier of any UN organization have the right to market itself proudly and publicly as a UN supplier? Are there any guidelines for this?
Unfortunately, we do have a rule that says no.
It says no. Okay, clear answer.
It's just that rule has always been there. So it can't be used as marketing. Of course, it can be mentioned, but can't be used to market your business.
But in this sense, that was a very good question.
Yes.
An answer. Okay, so Carrie and Diane, thank you so much. For everyone else, if you have more questions, there were a few questions we did not manage to answer, but if you have more questions, please get back to us and we will make sure to get the answers to you through other channels. So, thank you for now. We'll move on to Mari-Liis Sepp from the Estonian Embassy in Copenhagen. If she's with us.
Yes, I'm with you. Thank you, and a warm welcome to everyone from Copenhagen. Just a second here. I will talk to you today mostly about the UN International Procurement Seminar, what it's about a little bit, and then how to apply. Because I think what you've already heard and understood also is that unfortunately there are limited slots available, and then for that we will need to possibly screen the companies who are able to be participating in the actual seminar in January. But yes, the IPS will be held on the 28th to 29th of January in 2021. And I will engage United Nations headquarters and their procurement departments, and also 9 different UN agencies with approximately 100 companies from different countries. It was initially meant to be a physical event in Copenhagen, in the UN city here, but unfortunately, where we are right now, that is not possible. And as similar events worldwide, we are also going virtual. This is a first of these official procurement seminars that Estonia has been able to take part in. So we are all learning, but also I think it is a very great opportunity for Estonian companies, because mostly I think we've been hearing about the digital successes of Estonian companies working with the UN, but when you later go on to the UN city website, the website of the UN city in Copenhagen, you will see that UN is procuring a lot more than only this. But approximately 100 companies. Preparation is key. You will have to stand out from inside a large crowd. The 100 companies will be only taking part in the IPS, but as you heard from the previous presentations, there are 280,000 companies on the UNGM seeking opportunities to do business with the UN. So in order for you to best prepare, I would like you to start thinking about answering 3 questions. Who are you as a company? What product or service are you offering? And which agencies could potentially be your clients, and why? In describing this, you will have to be brief and concise, because time and space are always limited. And please know the department or agency you're approaching, because only then you can have meaningful conversations that will take you further in the process. You've heard from the United Nations General Marketplace from Diane, so I will not go more into details about this, but I will say that being registered on the UNGM is a prerequisite for doing business with the UN and also for attending the IPS. It is also very necessary to be on the UNGM regardless of your participation on the IPS, because this is the only way to do business with the UN. And it also is a very interesting page, because as Diane already referred, it includes a lot of relevant material about your background work and about approaching the UN correctly. What I would like to say more about the UNGM, just to close off, is that please keep your profiles updated. When we were sending out invites to this webinar today, we approached all the companies that are listed, the Estonian companies that are listed on the UNGM, and nearly a third of them did not have valid contact information anymore. So I think it's also very important that in terms of talking to the UN, you will have the most relevant data there. And now getting to participating UN organizations, as already mentioned, there will be 10 different organizations. I have listed 6 of them on this slide and some others on the next. It's quite a handful of acronyms there, but I'm happy to say that, for example, with UNICEF and UNOPS, we already have some successful projects going on relating to different topics. The UN Relief and Works Agency has expressed interest in the Estonian education technology companies or startups, because as they are working with the Palestine refugees, under their mandate, there are around 540,000 kids who are not able to to access education due to the situation in Palestine and the pandemic. I think World Health Organization does not need further introduction. I think we've heard a lot about it regarding the pandemic. Also, World Food Program, rather self-explanatory. I have also listed here some useful links for both the United Nations General Marketplace as well as the UN City in Copenhagen. Please go see and read about different organizations. Be prepared, do your homework. And last but not least, how the application process for the companies who are interested in attending the IPS will look like. Is first, you will have to fill out a questionnaire on the EAS website. The link will be forwarded to everyone who participated in this webinar via email today or tomorrow. The questionnaire will be asking the same 3 questions and some more technical details about your company. And this will have to be filled in latest by December 1st. So you can already start doing your homework, thinking of how you would like to describe your company, why you would have to be included in the IPS, and what you would gain from it as a company. In case there are more companies that we have slots available, then the chosen companies, as well as those who will be left out at this time, will be notified on December 3rd at the latest. And then further, after receiving the invite to the IPS, you will have to register both at the UNGM and also at the platform where the IPS webinar is being held by December 15th. You will be requesting meetings with relevant UN agencies and also meetings with other participating companies in January. And then the actual virtual IPS with all the meetings, presentations, and roundtables will take place on January 28th to 29th. I encourage you to think about what you would like to say, how you would say it, and also please do not hesitate to contact us, me and Lucy, if you have any questions regarding the application process or the IPS itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilise. So that was an overview of what's coming up in January. And again, I would like to repeat that this is a very unique opportunity for Estonian companies to be part of this seminar. Please contact us if you have more questions. Otherwise, we look forward to start receiving your applications for this seminar as soon as the application link gets to you a little bit later this week. And now we'll get to our presenter, next presenter, Monika Lekic. I think this will be a fantastic way how to round off our time here today, because Monika will then actually show you in real world how everything has functioned in regards to registering as a UN supplier, becoming a UN supplier, and functioning as a UN supplier. So Monika, please, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Lucy, first of all, for this very interesting seminar and for the invitation. So just to check, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yes, you can, and you can hear me well.
Yes, everything functions great.
Okay, perfect. So actually, as by the schedule, my presentation is already over. I tried to be very short. I had kind of 2 parts of my presentation. First, just to show you an idea or the profile of the supplier. And since now we say that we are pretty successful supplier for UN organizations. So just few words, and actually I tried to focus on the second part of the presentation where I actually want to highlight some lessons learned as a, I would say, as a small Estonian organization who works with UN. So a few words about myself. I joined Estonian e-Governance Academy pretty from the beginning. I have been there, working there 16 years, and we were a pretty small organization back then. Started with 4 full-time employees. So I'm really glad to see also that here are small companies who are searching for different opportunities, because this was pretty much our case back then. And we were first mainly focusing on sharing Estonian e-governance practices, and our core activity was providing different study visits. And interesting fact is that we actually had kind of the multi-donor project funded by UNDP, Estonian government, and Soros Foundation, and it lasted for the 3 years. But it was pretty clear from the beginning that we have like minor finances for 3 years, but we need to then be sustainable and start with other activities as well. And then we started to search around on different websites and on different opportunities. And actually, first our projects where we submitted the bids were related with UNDP back to 2004, and in Macedonia related to e-governance, building up the e-governance strategy there, and training the trainers program. So then we were 4 employees. Now we have been growing. There are 30 of us full-time employed, and we have a network of external experts. I was just checking, we have 300 experts in our expert pool. So we have been growing since then. Then a few words also about our, just to see why the slides are not. Few words about our fields of expertise. Well, I'm really short. We actually have 4 programs in our academy. It's smart governance, there where we build, help different countries with digital transformation process. Then e-democracy, where we can help governments and other institutions to use the ICT tools and engage citizens in their programs. Then technology part, because there is a high interest to implement different type of technology. And 4th is national cybersecurity program. So it's actually I would put as the 5th field is we still do plenty of study visits. We last year annually hosted more than 40 study visits, and here where we build also different networks. And as it was today mentioned several times, that actually we need to share the experience, tell what we do, and then this is a perfect opportunity for us to share with delegations. And different UN organizations have been coming to Estonia and visit and see how we are dealing with digital transformation in Estonia. So it's just to move on. Just to show now where we have had projects, so what is where we are functioning. It's since until now more than 130 countries. There are different projects ongoing, I think currently in maybe 26 countries. And we have been advising more than 200 organizations, and there are more than 600, 500 participants participated in our training events. And as you can imagine, in the situation where we are, most of this is, of course, currently online. And the main donors I just want to highlight that we are very actively working with UNDP and also since this year or from the last year with World Food Programme that is part of UN family. Here are some examples, concrete examples and practical examples what we are doing as an UN supplier. We currently have ongoing very interesting project in Iraq. We are helping the government to build up the public distribution system for the food, that it would be much more transparent and different databases can be interconnected. So it's very much based on a very good example of well-functioning system in Estonia. And there we are working together with World Food Programme. And some people also, some participants ask what are the size of the projects. It's not a secret. It's over $400,000 US. So, and the project is ongoing, and we hope to successfully finalize it by the end of this year. Then the second very interesting project last year, again, we found information from UN Global Marketplace, was related to the unique ID system for Timor-Leste. It was, we helped the government to build up the common understanding how to build up and how they also need to register their citizens, because the reality was that actually no databases are up to date and different sources of information. And some more few projects, we also advised the Serbian government. They in 2017 they had new institution for IT and e-governance, and they had kind of the short project or small bid for advising how to build up their institution and to help with capacity building. And again, it was a successful one for us. And the last one, it's very interesting because this one was submitted this morning, 6 o'clock. It was ongoing bid then. The deadline is closed, but we just submitted this night next bid for the digital maturity assessment for 3 Arab states. So this is a very fresh one, and we still don't know the results, but I just wanted to show that we are very active in doing business work with UN organizations. So, and actually my final slide, and I encourage you to ask also the questions, is actually related for the very practical lessons learned from our side, because I have been working with UN organizations, as I mentioned, and with these bids already 16 years. And first is, of course, to get to know all of these opportunities, and it should be really active search for business opportunities. We do it on the daily basis because it's, as it was also mentioned, the deadlines are really short, so we need to be sure that we are not missing some good opportunities for us. And we have been joining also different alert services, because it's you will see there are like so different opportunities ongoing, and time to time you get crazy to really search for the opportunity that is exactly fitting with your qualifications and experience. Second one, it was mentioned already today several times that keeping the information up to date, but why I put it here also was that actually what we do in e-Governance Academy, we are keeping different type of information, not only in the databases, but we collect the information that can help us to fast and successfully submit the tenders. Few examples, for example, to have annual registration document from the business registry ready, and we always do the English translations, because if you can imagine, if you have 1 or 2 weeks time for submitting the tender, and when you start to put together all this administrative part, you have really shortage, or you cannot focus so much on the methodology side. And as Kerry very nicely in the morning explained, very often actually the tenders or the bids where we are participating in, we get like 60-70% will go to the actually for this technical part, that and for the methodology. So and also I encourage, if you think about becoming an UN supplier, to collect information. For example, if you did some kind of successful project, just ask from the client immediately the support letter. It doesn't need to be from UN agency. It can be whatever experience you have had, because very often in this type of bids you ask to provide the proof and to show the support letters from the client. And you can imagine when the project was 3 or 4 years ago, maybe people already have been changed. They even don't know what the project was about. So the good lesson learned is that to keep this type of information ready, and you don't need to waste more time on this type of topics. And very often, for example, in our tenders also, it asks the profile of experts or CVs, and we are also keeping this type of information up to date. So it would be really easy to just copy paste or a bit tailor to the specific needs of the bid. Then also, as it was mentioned again, it's like it's one big UN family, but each institution actually within the UN system can have different procedures. So when you look in the opportunities and you discover a bid, I immediately see how you need to submit this bid or tender, because for example, in our case, World Food Programme had their own platform, and UNDP, they are using the Atlas platform. So just to be sure that you are registered on different systems if it's necessary, or as it was said, time to time, it's you need to deliver still the bid by post, so it also can take time. You can imagine we last year had a project with UNDP when we were asked to submit the tender by post, and actually even by DHL we needed 1 week. So just to be sure that you are on the safe side and you know exactly when you need to deliver the bid. Also, Kerry already mentioned, but very big lesson learned, especially in this COVID situation and generally, is that you have good local experts or contacts or partners on the ground. It's also very important for the bid preparation, because often they know the best information about the prices and how the institutions or different organizations work. And for example, we have this very unpleasant situation. We have now projects in Iraq, and we have in Armenia, where we also have unfortunately this war situation. So we have someone who can provide us the information and facilitate us in all this project process. And also, I wanted to say a few words that surprisingly, also developing countries, when we have now this COVID situation, the online work is surprisingly well done, and they are all pretty well prepared. So we daily basis use Skype or Teams meetings and doing different seminars. So it's I encourage you, especially in this environment. It's we thought at the beginning that we have a bit slowdown in our activities, but it's exactly the opposite. And last but not least, as the time is over, it's very important actually to build the trust in donor community, and it can be done in different ways. Of course, first to talk about your activities and do a good marketing, but also when you do the project, do it as well as you can, and it's actually very big opportunity to get the next projects or next opportunities. And maybe I also wanted to do more things related to the questions that were asked today. I also want to say that even if you don't succeed, try to put together the first bid. I remember mine back to 2004. I was awake the whole night and almost crying, but actually the next one was much easier, and you can do then already a lot of copy paste, and you can build up on this first experience. And last comment is it was question about here are very small companies and maybe not having this 3 years experience. And for example, in our last tender documentation, we needed to have the turnover over $1 million US, but just really put together companies and build up the consortium, and together you can have these first projects definitely. So just join the forces, and I think then the statistics will be even better than today for us as a UN supplier. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. It has been very useful. I'm sure very useful for all the participating companies to hear someone cementing what has been said in the previous, what could have seemed theoretical inputs by Carrie and Diane. So very nice to see how it really functions in practice, and that it very much functions as it has been described. So thank you for being so honest with describing what you have been going through, and some of the hard times, but also the wonderful successes you've managed to build up. I apologize to you and everyone else that we've gone over time. It's just difficult for me to cut someone short when the topics are so interesting, and I can see there is interest from the audience as well. I want to say that all the presentations that were shown here today, as well as the recording of the entire webinar, will be made available to everyone afterwards. So again, apologies to those who have to leave earlier. I could not be here until the end, but the information will be made available. Monica, we have we have 2 questions which I would like to actually run by you before we say thank you for today. Let me find these questions. Where did they disappear? Some questions.
I can see the one for the success rate, most probably.
Yes, a success rate, yes. That's a good question.
Yeah,
so
that's a good question. We actually have kind of the statistics also, but of course I'm not very sure about the exact numbers, but I can say it's about 30% in our organization. So let's say every 3rd project we usually get.
And how big is your team working on the bit?
Yeah, from the beginning we did, of course, everything. Everyone did everything. So you can imagine when there are 4 people and we need to implement the project and put together the proposal. But currently, as we are now really, as I mentioned, 300 external experts and 30 of us, since last year, there were only I who were dealing with these bigger tenders and coordinating. That doesn't mean that we always ask expert advice or experts to put together the methodology and always working together as a team. But I am the only one who is like leading the whole process. And now there are 2 of us. So,
all right.
yes.
Yeah. But this is a very good input as well, that it's manageable by one person, resources, and advice to get also external help for the bidding process. That's a good idea.
Yes, and always involve, for example, for the consultancy, it's really important that you involve the people who are doing the project later as well. Not that they will get the project and the success rate is high and actually you cannot deliver. So it's very important to have people in the team.
Thank you. Monica, can we share your contact information with everyone else in case some companies have additional questions in the future?
Yeah, sure. And I have my slides, and the last one actually was about with my contact details.
Wonderful. All right.
Feel free.
Questions, and yeah, have a nice rest of the day. Bye.